think if you're looking at even before you file for divorce, you have to understand that if that is a person, a profile that's in the marriage, that character, right, that you might have to go through litigation. So, either way, we like to say you have to choose what's best for you, but in some cases, somebody could say, oh, you could do all this through mediation. Sometimes I've seen we've tried that path, and the narcissist keeps it going now for 4 years. So you have to see when something is being used against you as a manipulation tactic. But at the very beginning, how you endeavor to do this, the attorneys that you hire could also be very instigative. Like you've talked about some of people and specific case studies where couples have gone through this legal separation or a postnup or divorce mediation. Can you give us some examples? Because again, who you hire at the beginning, if you have no clue of what's going to happen and you're just like, oh, I hired a bulldog. Oh, I hired a shark.
Yeah.
I hired we have all these terms that may or may not be your best first step.
Yeah. So specific case studies, I mean, it's a matter of how I practice law is I almost always look for opportunities to sit down and have a discussion and resolve issues. So I will often do just short-term custody issues, have a discussion about it, reach an agreement on it, and then we'll put it in writing. It's more of a litigation strategy to say I won't agree to do anything unless we globally resolve everything. And that creates problems because sometimes people just want to separate. So I call it a move out agreement. We'll do short-term agreements just to separate the parties for a few months. It's without prejudice, which means it's not binding. You can't consider it an abandonment of the home or a long-term custody issue. But I encourage any type of written agreement where people can agree on anything. Maybe it's an agreement to file taxes together or an agreement how certain bills will be paid. Whatever it takes to reach agreements, even if they're partial, I'm in favor of. And I think it builds trust for parties to see that attorneys and mediators can work together, that we don't have to leave everything open and have a global resolution of everything, which sometimes it can take many months to get to that point where everything is resolved. And I come across attorneys every day who say, Jackie, I won't do a custody agreement. We have to resolve everything. And meanwhile, you have clients that are completely freaking out. They just want to live apart and they need a custody agreement to do that. So it really is how I practice law, is to really address whatever issues I can by mediation and avoid a court process. And I've had cases that are very challenging where the attorneys work together well and the parties see that these attorneys are helping us. We've resolved custody and now we're going to resolve the financial issues. So I just encourage, that's what works for my practice, is encouraging written agreements whenever possible and only going to court if we're required to because a motion has already been filed or because there's a true emergency going on. And I'm not going to hesitate to go seek court intervention in that case. When we have orders of protection, which are very common in New York, probably a third of our cases have some sort of protective order, we can sometimes convert those into custody agreements. And we do it by saying the wife will agree to drop the order of protection as long as she stays in the home, the husband stays out for, let's say, 6 months, and we work out a custody schedule. And therefore, this order of protection, which sounds so negative, and the husband doesn't like having to deal with an order of protection. He doesn't agree with the allegations. He thinks they're all lies. But we can convert that into a short-term custody schedule because really these parties need to separate. And I'll tell my clients, I represent a lot of men, and say, listen, whether she's saying what she's saying, if it's true or false, the fact is you need to live apart. You cannot live together. So let's find an agreement where we can make that a reality. You have joint custody of your children and we address financial issues and we get rid of the order of protection. So again, there's so many possibilities if you're willing to be creative and just reach agreements, if you're open to that.